So immigration has been a big issue for you from day one.
Yep.
And what is it about that issue that you feel like was so particularly important? It seemed to be even potent as an election issue because at least those of us outside looking in, that was like the issue of that race.
Right.
And people really, I feel like, made their wishes known by casting that ballot for you as opposed to,
No, you're right. It's kind of a two-pronged thing. To answer your question, what is it about that issue? It's the one where you can't hide under the table. It's kind of a yes or no answer, and that's why with Trump and all this kind of thing right now, you can't duck and hide on that. On taxes, you can say, I'm going to vote for this. I'm in favor of this roughly. You're never held to account. But you say any word on immigration policy, and you're either for or against the whole array of issues that come up, and politicians can't hide on it. So it was, I said back then, it was the most important symbolic issue that separated us because he couldn't hide. He had a clear policy. He had basically was the leader on the House side for the Senate Gang of Eight bill. And then on top of it, since then, thanks to Trump and Laura Ingraham and Senator Jeff Sessions and Gary and all these folks that work on that issue, now the substantive pieces come into play. There are real national security threats. There are real economic threats. Everyone's paying the tax bill. And so none of that was known, right? I mean, the Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber, not the state and local good guys, but the U.S. Chamber wants cheap labor. And so a lot of this was hidden from the voters' sight. And now they're finding out the true tax bill they're paying to support, say, average person comes across and makes $20,000 a year. Pay very little in federal tax, et cetera. They got 2 kids in public schools. That's about $25,000 a year. Who's paying that bill? And so the average voter's figuring that kind of thing out right now, and they don't like it.
See, I really feel like guys like you, guys like Gary, guys like Jeff Sessions, you guys are actually giving the presidential candidates a blueprint for how to win the White House. Because if you look, we've done a couple of times on this program, we will play, or I will read 2 quotes. One of them is an Elizabeth Warren quote. One of them is a Jeff Sessions quote. Right. But you can't tell the difference between the two because what they are saying as far as the American people feel like the deck is stacked against them.
Right.
They're sick of the big business, big lobbyists. You go down the list, and that is a sentiment that is shared by America. Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. Y'all are tapping into that in a way that I think presidential candidates need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, well, and it's reciprocal because they're going to help us out big time. So I came in last year, November. Eric stepped down early, a month, so I came in on the Cromnibus. And that's a signal already. The whole budget process has failed if you got there, right? So the Budget Committee, we're on the Budget Committee. So all of our work is ignored. All of appropriations is ignored. And then you come to a CR or an omnibus. The right throws in the kitchen sink. The left throws everything they want in the kitchen sink. And it's a disaster. So 1,700 pages bill they gave it. The leadership gives to you, right? Time right before Christmas break. And it included funding for the Obama's unconstitutional amnesty. And so a bunch of us voted no on the rule, voted no on the thing. We got in all sorts of trouble for doing that. And so that was hard. But this year, we got the same exact thing has happened. The Budget Committee's broke. Appropriations broke. They didn't pass any bills. We're going to get a CR. It's going to be a disaster. We're going to break the budget caps, increase the debt ceiling with no discipline, do a long-term transportation package without paying for it, not deal with Planned Parenthood. But the one big difference, which you just covered, is now the presidential guys are watching. And so we're going to get some cover this time and some marketing and some TV time when this budget process falls apart, which it already has. This time it's going to be noticed by the American people. And so that's
the thing
good
is,
news.
and I haven't discussed this with Dave yet, but one of the things that I want to press our leadership on is to not fund the government through December 18th, because that's not official. It's just a date that I heard. And it's like you said, they know that everybody wants to go home for Christmas. And what we need to get our guys together and say, look, we're not going to do this again. We're not going to do the same thing that this year that we did last year. And I don't care if we have to stay till next Christmas. And move this thing forward. And I think a better date would be January 20th. That's 1 year from the time that we'll have a new president. Or my favorite date is April 15th. I like the messaging and the optics.
That's your favorite date?
Yeah, that's my favorite date.
I like this. We're just going to make let's just make federal policy right here on the radio.
Yeah.
Why not? I can't
Let's
think.
just fund the government through April 15th, and then we'll have that vote.
Let's talk a little bit about the presidential race. the Trump mania has swept the country. It came right here to Alabama. He came down to Mobile, and there was like 30,000 people showed up for this thing. And I'll tell you, I have been conflicted about this, and I like argue this out on a daily. Argue's probably not the right word. We wrestle with this with the callers on the show and our listeners, and we're trying to figure this out. Because on one hand, I'm looking at a guy like Donald Trump, and I'm thinking, okay, you were pro late-term abortion, you were pro single-payer health care. I mean, go down the list. You want to raise taxes on, your tax policy would raise the most taxes ever in the history of the United States. Okay, well then suddenly I love everything that's coming out of your mouth now,
right.
and I just don't think I believe you. That's my conflicted. What do you think it is about Donald Trump, what he's doing right now, that has captured the imagination of people so much all over the country?
Well, just a combination. I mean, he's unique. He's got the business success, and he's so big that if the press comes after any one of us, we go run and hide in the closet, right? The press goes after him, he goes back after the press.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that's unheard of. He's fearless on any issue. He comes out on the biggest issues that are the toughest ones, on amnesty, and gives a bunch of sub-bullet points that are controversial, and is willing to go head-to-head against the most powerful forces in the country with just, billions and billions of dollars backing. And so I think the average American person just said, hey, his basic thesis is we're losing, right? Why is the U.S. losing? Why are we losing to China? Why are we losing to Russia? Why are we losing at the border to Mexico? Why are our workers losing? Why aren't they getting a raise? Why are we spending money on the rest of the world when we got problems here? Why aren't our kids educated? And so the average person just goes, yeah, I want that. Whatever he's going to do to fix it. And you can't get any worse than the fixes that we're doing up there in D.C. right now, right? I mean, we're not moving heaven and earth on any of the things that affect the average American. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the cronies, whatever, if they want Export-Import Bank, leadership goes bananas. But we're throwing $18 trillion of debt on the next generation, right? We're spending it, and they're going to have to pay our bill. It's morally...
it's reprehensible.
It's terrible.
That is the very definition of taxation without representation.
That's right.
You're not even alive to have a say in whether or not you're going
to
the taxes you're going to have to pay on
this.
So, I mean, Trump, Cruz has been here to the state. Walker.
Yep.
I mean, we've got a lot of guys come down here to the state, which is new for us. You guys are used to it up in Virginia. It's new to us. I'm sure you've met a lot of these folks. Who do you like? Have you endorsed anybody yet? You hadn't yet. Who do you like? Who are you attracted to right now?
Any of these guys you mentioned that are free market, constitutional, and have some track record of fighting on the issues in the past, right? So they're not wobbly all over the place. And so I'm just waiting for the process to sort itself out. But these guys, Trump and Cruz and Carson and Farina, all the outsiders are like 55% of the vote right now. And so, I mean, that's a signal, right? And when you got 55% of the voters saying, hey, we're all in over here, I think it's going to be durable. A lot of the press likes to dismiss it and say, hey, it's just this pre-summer thing, and I don't think so. And because the issues that are being discussed are totally different than in the past.
You think Trump's got staying power? You think he's going to be around 6 months from now?
Yeah, I do. And you can tell. I mean, I don't know that for a fact yet, but you just look, can you set up a campaign apparatus in all 50 states? Because you got to have the infrastructure. So if he was just talking and getting press time and setting up an image, that'd be one thing. But I think I see him doing work in a bunch of the states, not just a few, and setting up campaign teams. And if that's the case, then he'll be around.
I'll tell you what, yesterday when he did the GOP pledge, whatever, and then he went toe-to-toe with the press for like 20 minutes after that, and just it freaked me out because the guy looked like the president.
Right.
It
really freaked me out.
He's getting better.
I was driving back from Mobile last Thursday, and he did a press conference, and they asked him about the shooting of the reporters in Virginia. He sounded presidential. He didn't sound perturbed. It was great. And then he had a press conference over the weekend. Somebody else is telling me, it's kind of like your reaction. He sounded presidential. I think what's going on, I think he and Ted Cruz are going to do an event together. And I think I said this earlier, that if you were to get these guys together, throw in a Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, Mike Huckabee, Carly Fiorina, Bobby Jindal, who in my opinion might be the smartest guy in the whole thing, and put together a team of teams that sweep every primary. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see something we've never seen before in presidential politics, where people who have an eye for that seat say, look, I'm going to put the best interest of the country first. We're at a point in our history where we have to put personal interest aside. and pursue what's in the best interest of the nation, I think it'd be off the charts. I think instead of 30,000, you'd have 100,000.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And imagine that folks like us coalesce around somebody for once, as opposed to the other side coalescing around their candidate and beating us. You mentioned the event that they're going to do. Cruz and Trump are doing. I think it has something to do with the Iran deal, doesn't it?
Right.
If I remember.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute. This is something we've talked about a good bit on this program, and the Obama administration got really mad at Cruz because he said, "You just made yourself the biggest, not sponsor, but funder of terrorism around the world because." Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism.
Right.
You lift these economic sanctions, billions of dollars flow into that. They're sending it to Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iraqi insurgents. I mean, go down the list. I think it's actually true. Yeah. What is your take on the Iran deal?
It is true, and it's worse than that. So it's $150 billion in sanctions relief this year, and $500 billion, $500 billion that they can use for terrorist purposes over the next decade. And so we've given them a legal pathway to a nuclear weapon in 12 to 14 years, an ICBM program, and ICBM's intercontinental, right? They have one purpose. You attach a nuclear warhead to the tip. That's the only weapon they deliver across the ocean. So that's for us.
Well, yeah.
And so it's all too clear. And the worst thing is kind of the preface to the thing. The Secretary of Energy came with Secretary Kerry and briefed us all in the Congress on the deal and all this kind of stuff. And I think he goofed up his talking points. He told us their economy was shrinking by 15% this year. That's social revolution time. So when they're on their knees, ready to fail, they're willing to bargain on anything for their survival's sake. We say, here, let us give you $150 billion right off the bat. Let us help you off with all our allies. And this shows you the people's frustration and kind of this Trump effect on when it comes to trade deals or whatever. We just argue and debate in these narrow little silos instead of using the full force of the United States of America, right? We go to if England or France or Germany says, hey, we're going to pull off our sanctions, we say, I don't think so, buddy. You're our good friend. If you want to stay that way, if you want to do trade with us, if you want to come to Harvard and Stanford and Princeton and use our patent system and this kind of thing, you want foreign aid, you want our military budget, we need to get smart. And so Trump, the CEO, I think, is standing for that kind of an executive. Instead of just these narrow little trade arguments, whatever. He's saying, no, the U.S. as a country is going to be a force to be reckoned with again. And people going, it's about time.
Yeah. Well, you think about how dumb this is, that instead of saying, okay, if you abide by this deal, we'll parcel out, $10 billion a month or $10 billion a quarter, whatever. No, we gave them $150 billion. We can't walk that back. Once they get their hands on it,
right?
They talk about these snapback sanctions. That's a joke.
Oh yeah.
And the thing that we ought to be telling a lot of these multinational corporations who want to do business with Iran, because that's a lot of what this is about. Is okay, you can do business with Iran, or you can do business with us.
Yeah.
We're 24% of the world's economy.
Right.
You don't think we couldn't have sanctions that hurt?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, appreciate you guys stopping in today. That's Congressman Gary Palmer, a good friend of the program. Congressman Dave Brat, a new friend of the program.
Thanks for having me on.
DaveBrat.com?
That's it.
All right, go donate. I don't do this very often. Go to DaveBrat.com. Drop him $10, $20, $50, whatever you can do to help him out because he needs it. They're coming after him, and if we expect to ever have a conservative Congress, we've got to step up and help the folks out there. All right, Cliff Sims, Yellowhammer Radio. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute.